Excellent. Drop out of that. Here, we'll hit that, record, and admit all. Stephen Bergson, you have the floor.
Thank you. And the August 5th Oregon Country Fair Board meeting will come to order. First, we have a few housekeeping announcements. I want to remind everyone we do not talk about personnel issues in open meetings. That includes staff, volunteers, or contractors. If you are not a board member, paid staff person, or officer, please turn off your camera unless you're called upon to speak. If your camera is on when someone else is speaking, please refrain from head shaking or dramatic gestures. The person who has the floor deserves everyone's attention without distraction. And with that, we will go to announcements. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand in chat. And I see your message too. Is there anyone who has an announcement? Stephen Dyerkoff.
Yeah, just want to remind folks that we have an election coming up in October. If anybody's interested in running for the board of directors, we will have 4 openings for 4 new directors. The deadline to submit your candidate statement is August 18th. All the information you need for the candidate statement should be found on our elections page. If you go to the .net site, there is a link there to the elections page. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just drop me an email. Some other deadlines we should talk about. September 19th is the deadline to register as a member. If you receive a wristband or a worker day pass, you are eligible to become a member of the fair, but you are not a voting member of the fair unless you submit a membership application. That also can be found on the .net site. On September 29th, we will have the Get Out the Vote Candidates Forum. This is where all the declared candidates will have a chance to answer questions from the membership. And on October 12th, we will conduct our annual membership meeting. That is tentatively scheduled for the LCC Longhouse. At that point, we will get some annual financial reports, the state of the peach, and introduce the candidates. 1 week later, on October 19th, ballots will be due for our fall election. Ballots must be received by the office on October 19th by 8 p.m. Postmarks do not count. You need to deliver your ballot to the office somehow by that time if you want your ballot counted. Thank you.
Thank you. And AJ.
Yes. Welcome, everybody. I just want to announce that the EDIB work group has extended, or the board has extended the deadline for you to sign up to be a part of that work group. You can go to the .net site and find out all the information you want about what we are trying to do with that group and how to sign up for that group. If you are all interested in equity, diversity and inclusion at all and belonging, if you're interested in doing the work and helping us move forward, please find out, go on the .net website and see what we're trying to do and sign up. We're looking for more people. I think we only have had 3 applications so far. We're looking to get far more people, so look us up. Thanks.
Thank you, AJ. And Arna, can you check the chat for your reply? Paxton.
I want to mention that we've scheduled the annual fair evaluation meeting for the morning of the picnic, Sunday morning at 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock at Alice's Fire Pit. It's our standard evaluation meeting where we sit down and select subjects we want to talk about, have breakout groups, and then give a report at the end. So Jen Lynn and I are running it as we've done for several years now. Alice's Fire Pit, 11 o'clock, the morning of the picnic, the 18th. Thank you.
Thank you, Paxton. Are there any other announcements? Sue, I take it you raise your hand for announcements?
Paxton, excuse me, did you say 11? I thought it started at 10.
We changed that.
Okay, just wanted to check. Thanks.
Sorry.
Did you have an
No,
announcement?
sorry.
Did you have an announcement, Sue, or is that it?
No, I just needed to check.
Okay, last call for announcements. Seeing none, we will go to the minutes of the June 30th, 2024 meeting. Is there any objection to adopting the minutes as presented? Oh, John, do you have an announcement?
No, it's on the minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
The last line on the first page of the minutes does not accurately what I said at the meeting. It wasn't that I was disappointed about not being able to vote on the carbon neutral motion. I was pointing out the weirdness of having to drive 200 miles to vote on a carbon neutral motion or not.
Do you have a specific change to the minutes that you're requesting?
I think it's actually okay if it's just part of the minutes this month and then we don't have to mess with it.
Okay, so part of the record by just you're announcing it, no change to the written minutes, correct?
Yes, thanks.
Arna,
I need to abstain from voting on the minutes. I wasn't at the meeting.
okay. Is there any further discussion on the minutes as presented? Is there any objection to adopting the minutes as presented? Last call? Seeing none, the June 30th, 2024 minutes are adopted as presented with Arna abstaining. Moving on to agenda review. I understand that there will be a request to move the carbon neutral motion to the first item. Is that correct? Correct?
I think that was correct for the July meeting, not for tonight.
Yes.
I don't think,
They're here to give a report, and I was informed that we were going to move it to the top for this.
okay,
I think we have to, I think the board has to vote on that first. So I have to first then ask the board for the carbon neutral group to be able to make a presentation before the motion regarding it.
So
10-minute presentation, and I'm asking for the board to amend the agenda to do so.
Second?
So there's two separate issues, AJ. So if you want to handle that one first, AJ is asking that the carbon neutral group be allowed to make a 10-minute presentation in advance, just before the motion is, just after the motion is brought to the floor. Is there any objection? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll-
Take a second. Seconded by Teresa. Is there any objection? Is there any objection at all to them making a presentation? Now I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing any hands here on this. Is that a hand from Sue or AJ for this discussion on agenda review?
Not from me.
Okay. All right. So seeing no objection, the 10-minute presentation is approved. Do you want to then move it to the beginning of the agenda, AJ? That was my understanding.
Yep, that would have been my second amendment, is to
Okay.
move it to the item for the purposes of not having the folks have to wait through the whole meeting to do their presentation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by AJ and seconded by Sandra. Is there any objection to moving that item to the first item on the agenda of old business? Last call. Seeing no objection, that will be the first item of old business. Anything else on the agenda? Sue?
Um, excuse my voice. We have 2 motions to appoint members to committees, and we have at least one of those people present tonight. Could we move those appointment motions to right after the carbon neutral presentation and vote?
Second.
Okay, so Sue is asking to move the committee appointments to after carbon neutral as the second item. Both of them, I take it, even though only one
Yes.
people's here. And
Yes, I think it's
and-
courtesy.
who was that second? Teresa? Teresa seconds. Is there any objection to that? Last call for any objection to moving those to the right after carbon neutral. Seeing none, so ordered. Anything else on the agenda? Last call for agenda items. Moving on from agenda review. The agenda is approved as amended. We'll go to membership comments. Are there any members here who wish to make any comments? Please raise your hand in chat. This is member input time. Heather.
Okay, took me a second to unmute. Sorry, usually faster than that. My understanding from bylaws elections committee meeting that I attended is that the attorney gave her okay for her opinion to be read to the general meeting that we're having right now regarding one of the motions that's upcoming about membership age and other things. And I just wanted to ask that if that's going to be read, if that happened as soon as possible so that we have time to think about it and formulate our comments accordingly rather than having no time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Heather. Anne.
Yes, I was trying to find the June, July meeting minutes because I was unable to attend the meeting. And when I went to the board minutes page, there's been nothing posted since February 6th. So, you know, it's kind of hard if you were unavailable due to your having to volunteer and you can't find it because it's not in the Family Fair News. Second of all, I would like to encourage all committees to at least the day before their meeting, although best practices recommends 1 week ahead, to post their agendas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Any other member input? Last call for member input. Okay, moving on. Staff report. Kirsten.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. I hope you all had a wonderful fair. I want to congratulate everyone on another great fair. I have deep gratitude to the coordinators, crew leaders, and volunteer staff for getting the site ready, to the artists, entertainers, and restaurateurs for putting on a great show, to the employees who work year-round to support all the amazing individuals that make the fair a success. You are all an essential part of making the fair magic, and I do hope you feel the love that you create. There were lots of successes this year and a couple of challenges. I want to address the challenges first. There has been a lot of negative feedback on the portable toilets. This is not a new complaint, as we received many complaints in 2022 and 2023 about honey buckets. We listened to your feedback, and combined with their price increase, we felt it prudent to seek a new portable toilet provider. I do acknowledge that this year was particularly rough. Our 5-year contract ended with Honey Buckets in 2022. In 2023, they quoted a new 5-year contract, and the first year of the contract was triple what it had been. It increased significantly each year of the quote. We agreed to a 1-year contract so that we could seek competitive bids. We immediately reached out to all local portable toilet providers. Several wouldn't bid because they were already committed to the campgrounds around our event and couldn't handle such a big event. United Site Services appeared through our equipment rental relationship with United Rentals. We invited them to the 2023 event to see our portable toilet needs. They were confident they could provide the service we needed at a competitive rate. We agreed to a one-year service agreement. All the details were provided to them: quantities, delivery dates, service schedules, etc. Ultimately, they did not deliver the units on time or the units we expected. An example is the hand washing stations. We expected quad hand washing stations and only received doubles. Doubles only last a couple hours at best due to their limited water storage tanks. By the time we realized they'd shipped the wrong ones, it was too late to get the correct ones in time for the fair. All of this created a cascading effect where we were barely able to get all the units in place before we opened to the public. Once we opened the fair, things started to level out. We had toilet paper ferries delivering toilet paper in large quantities to make sure each unit didn't run out. Then we were sabotaged by people stealing the toilet paper and throwing it in the trash, which made it hard to keep them well stocked. There has been assertions that we hired a budget portable toilet service provider. I can assure you that is not the case. They came highly recommended and handle large events across the country. We are a unique peach, and it does take time to learn our venue. There was a huge learning curve on both sides. We knew this wasn't going to be easy, and I apologize for the inconvenience this caused our family. One of the successes was our new ticket provider, Afton Tickets. This was a seamless transition. We were able to scan both admissions and parking without any technical issues. Our office ticket sales added a new option for in-person ticket purchasing. Our 3-day ticket buyers didn't have to stand in long lines to get their wristbands. There was no need for will call for pickup. This made for a faster entry into the event for the public, and I look forward to continuing this modern process for ticket sales. In regards to 2024 admissions, on Friday, we sold 13,703 tickets. That is up 1,297 tickets over 2023. On Saturday, we sold 15,500 tickets. That is up 100 tickets over 2023. On Sunday, we sold 10,116 tickets. That was down 1,013 tickets. Across all 3 days, we sold 335 more tickets in 2024 over 2023. In regards to budget, most revenue categories achieved or exceeded budget. This is preliminary numbers, and the reconciled July financials will be presented to the board at the September board meeting. Expenses won't be fully known until after September 30th. That is the deadline for coordinators to submit all expenses for the 2024 fair. On the administration side, the 2023 financial statements are underway. I expect to have them to the board at the September meeting. We will begin the 2023 990 and CT12 tax filings in August. I expect to have them to the board at the October meeting. The board of directors election is October 19th, as mentioned by Stephen Dyer-Kopp. Ballots are due at the Eugene office by 8 p.m. on that day. Candidate statement deadline is October 18th at 8 p.m. and you can email your candidate statement to elections@OregonCountryFair.org. A candidate forum will be scheduled. I just heard that it will be on September 29th. September 19th is the deadline to register to vote in this election, and the annual membership meeting is October 12th at 6 p.m., and we are securing the Longhouse. Marketing. The media coverage of our event was very good. Social media coverage was excellent, and our advertising was effective. Ticket sales were on par with 2023. Oregon Public Broadcasting spent all 3 days at our event, and we look forward to a watch party when they release the Art Beat episode about us. So stay tuned for information on that. Event management. The Teddy Bear Picnic is Sunday, August 18th from 2 p.m. to dusk. There is no camping on site on Saturday, August 17th, except for crews supporting the event. Volunteers can camp on Sunday night, August 18th. I want to read a synopsis of our SUP, as there's been a lot of confusion in regards to what is allowed around our Teddy Bear Picnic. This goes back to 2017. Gatherings of single-day events for small social gatherings of members and guests, such as weddings, picnics, and memorials, for a maximum of 500 persons 6 times between April through October. Music will be limited from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. and will be subject to the constraints outlined in the noise survey reported in 2016. Any amplified music associated with the event will occur at a temporary stage area located in the same location as the annual event stage. And this is Park Area 1. So our SUP is a special use permit, and we have 4 different areas, and the Teddy Bear Picnic falls into Park Area 1, which is main stage. Camping would occur in areas used for camping during the annual Oregon Country Fair event. Sanitation would be provided by porta potties and parking to occur in the hub and SCOP. The events would typically occur on a Saturday, with some participants arriving on Friday and departing on Sunday. Since ours is on Sunday this year, because we rotate every year from Saturday to Sunday based on the goal of getting Saturday market crafters to be able to attend the picnic every other year. So this year, attendees can start arriving in support, the crews that are in support of the event can start arriving on Saturday, with the general membership and volunteers arriving on Sunday. Events for more than 250 persons require a special events permit, and we must post that we are holding this event on our .net site, which we have done. So just wanted to clarify, there's been a lot of confusion that this used to be a 3-day event. In reality, our SUP, which was issued in 2016, tells us it's a single-day event, that we can have camping and we can have up to 500 people. Any more than that, we have to get a special activity permit. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there's nothing unusual about this year, other than the fact that it's on Sunday, which we did in 2022. And so in 2025, it will be on Saturday again. There are several crews that support this event. They know who they are. They've been contacted, and they are working to come and support the event. The Sugar Beets will be playing from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Chicken and sides will be served at 3 p.m. Feel free to bring a dish to share with your picnic group. There's no need to bring sides to share with the entire picnic. For the site management, the site is looking good and almost everything has been put away. Culture Jam is happening now and will be put away shortly after it is over. It ends this Thursday. The Beaver Open is the next event the site employees will be preparing for, and it is held Labor Day weekend. We also have the Elmira High School track and field event, which will be held on our site on September 11th. Thank you again all for a really wonderful fair this year. I wish it was a little bit cooler. I'll try and put in an order for cooler weather next year. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And Treasurer's report.
Thanks. I hope everybody had a fantastic fair. It possibly was the first profitable fair that we've had since 2019, which I think we can sigh a big sigh of relief. As Kirsten said, we only have preliminary results in so far, and I want to give a big thanks to most of the crews that have something to do with our cash input cycle. That's the inventory crew, the wristband crew, commemorative sales, registration, the database crew, admissions, which does paid parking. Some of the other crews have other roles. Each coordinator has some kind of role with our cash input. But it's a huge amount of responsibility these crews take on. They're handling massive amounts of money, and I really want to acknowledge what a great job that they're doing. And as you know, we're in the middle of changing a lot of our systems, and we had a really big leap forward with the database. I want to talk a little bit about the capacity update, which is related to our finances. I'll give you a more complete financial report at the annual meeting, and I will put some summary numbers as well about the capacity. If you remember, what we've done with capacity is say that 2019 had so many people that we wanted to scale it back. So we aim to have about the same number of people per day on site as in 2018. So that would be in 2018, it was close to, let's see, it was about 18,000 people camping with about 2,500 people getting day passes, and on average 15,000 people a day buying tickets. We're not reaching 15,000 people a day. We're budgeting, or we've set our admissions limit so that we could have 15,000 people a day, But one of the changes since COVID is that some of the demands for tickets is softer. We sold out on Saturday, as you know, from Kirsten's reports, but on Friday and Sunday we didn't. So very pleasurable to have fewer people there, but we have a softer demand. And internally, we've really been trying to work with looking at what are the priorities for how are we allocating budget-wise the passes. And the fair has a commitment to elders. And since 2018, elders has grown. The crew coordinators have advocated for changes that will help them operationally meet what their mission is. And we've grown the crews somewhat. We have some of these changes are hard to compare because we have reclassified things and not all the numbers are totally in yet, but we've kept the amount of entertainers pretty solid. We have had recently fewer teens with paid passes. We have had fewer people coming on day passes that we are issuing, and we've had fewer management trades. So we are way below we're hitting our goal of having fewer people on site than we did in 2019. We have way fewer people than we did in 2018 even, but there's a big shift. In 2017, we had more day people than we did camping people. Now we have more camping people than we do day people, or admissions people. And then there's that 2,000 people that we give the passes to that I'm not putting in either of those groups. So just to be aware that we're having more people to service the organization and make our goals happen. And then in turn, to be able to support those people staying overnight, we have certain obligations. So I'm hoping that the board will stick with these capacity limits and let us continue to work with these limits and figure out where the sweet spot is, where our demand for tickets will go, what our needs for servicing among the crews are, and let the budget committee and the and management work with trying to find where our service level needs to be. So it could take a few years to figure this out. I want to give a big shout out to the people who did the database, Sean and John Steinhardt, and I don't know who else is on the crew. It is an amazing thing, and there was definitely a bumpy road to get started with, but to be able to have contemporaneous universal information about all these different budget categories is very, very new for us. In the past, in order for me to be able to report to you how many of each of these different types of passes, I would have to go to the QuickBooks for one system, a QuickBooks for another system, a database for a different system, get a spreadsheet from a different system, estimate on some of them. And this year I did have to do some estimates because not everything is in the database yet, but it's much, much closer. So there's a lot of advantages to the database. I encourage you all to be patient with the rollout. We will be able to email everybody individually rather than just booth reps and crew coordinators. We will allow people to be able to pay directly rather than have coordinators have tens of thousands of dollars in their personal possession. So I just want people to understand that there's a goal in mind here, and I'm encouraging to stick with it because it's a really valuable thing that we have invested in here and that we're developing. So more in September or more in October when we do the annual report. I want to thank everybody. I'm always impressed at how much detail people can absorb and how much detail they're interested in. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Hillary. Moving on to committees and work group reports. Is there any objection to accepting the committee and work group reports as submitted? Any discussion, alterations, or objections? Raise your hand in chat. Last call. Seeing no objection, the committees and work group reports are accepted unanimously as submitted. And now we are moving on to old business. We're starting with the update on carbon neutral event. The goal of being carbon neutral by the year 2030, sponsored by AJ, Lisa, Sandra, Sue, John, and Teresa. Let's bring the motion to the floor and then have the presentation. Who's going to make the motion?
I'll do that.
Sandra, moved by Sandra, seconded by John Alexander.
Okay, the
Okay.
motion,
Did you want to talk, or are we going to take the presentation?
I'm going to read the motion.
Okay.
Okay, the motion is to continue the fair's environmental leadership and to do its part to contain the severe threat of climate change poses. The Oregon Country Fair Board of Directors hereby declares that it will remain dedicated to the goal of becoming a carbon neutral event by the year 2030. And there's a little background, but I think that Sally and Craig will probably address that.
Okay. Who's going to start with the presentation?
I will.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally Edmonds, and I'm one of the members of the Carbon Neutral Working Group, and I'm also one of your backup managers. So the purpose of this project is to figure out how the fair can do its part to reduce our impact on the environment and thus climate change. So tonight, Craig Smith and I will provide you with some background on the project, describe how we calculated the fair's carbon footprint, and then outline some of the recommendations in the report. So a little background here. In 2019, Craig, Andrea Carlos, who's with Stewardship in Xanadu, and I built on the work of the 50th Anniversary Sustainability Initiative and came to the board with a motion to strive to become carbon neutral by 2025. The three of us, along with Cynthia Peachy, formed the Carbon Neutral Working Group, and in February 2020, we partnered with Portland State University's Institute for Sustainable Solutions to calculate and begin to develop a plan to lower the fair's carbon footprint. And I apologize for my cat if you can hear him in the background. A summary of the collaboration between the fair and PSU's graduate students and faculty was presented to the board in 2020, in February 2020. Sorry, September 2020. The project's phase 1 reports are available on the .NET site. The Carbon Neutral Working Group continued to meet through the COVID years of 2020 and 2021. During this time, we gathered data from event operations, volunteers, and ticket buyers. And one of the key findings was that, like most events, most of our carbon footprint comes from transportation. So that's where we've really been focused. So once we were back on the ground in 2022 through 2024, we gathered input from fairgoers on their transportation patterns through surveys at the Stewardship in Xanadu and surveys by the OCF survey team. And while we've made some progress, we still have a lot of work to do, and thus we need to update the motion. So now I'll turn it over to Craig to talk about the carbon footprint.
Thanks, Sally. And I wanted to thank the board for setting the original goal to reduce our carbon footprint, to strive to become carbon neutral, and also for providing us with the resources to do the original analysis. We could not have done that analysis without the great work of the team that Sally outlined. And of course, the partnership with Portland State University Institute for Sustainable Solutions and Beth and Luke and Professor Sahan there that did the majority of the work with us. So we did that work in 2019, and we were able to come up with an estimate of the amount of carbon that the fair and that is produced by having the Oregon Country Fair. And as Sally mentioned, the majority of the carbon is produced by transportation. And one of the surprising things for us was that the fair family created more carbon than the fair-going public. And so we have been trying to work with strategies internally to reduce the amount of travel that the fair family does. As awful as the pandemic was and how awful it was, we couldn't have a fair for 2 years. We did incredibly reduce our carbon footprint by not having a fair, since 97% of the carbon is created by transportation. There were some good things we learned from that. Right now, we're having a Zoom meeting with the board, and a lot of transportation, including what John Steinhardt mentioned, doesn't have to happen when we can meet by Zoom. And so the actual fair carbon production, or the amount of carbon that the fair family produces, can be and is being reduced by simple things like Zoom and carpooling and less trips to the fair site. So unfortunately, we don't have good data on this. We have great data on the public. And I wanted to really thank Vanessa and Kirsten for the help in getting the Tickets West data, who was our ticket provider in 2023, and allowing us to email every single ticket buyer. So the nice thing about the ticket companies is they gather this data and it belongs to us. So we get everybody's address and email and even telephone numbers, although we don't really need those. But we were able to use that data to survey them and get better information than we had in 2019 to calculate our original carbon footprint. We learned that the public travels in carpools and has more than 2 people we originally estimated. And we learned that even though the distances are long, less people fly than we thought. And flying has a very high carbon footprint. So we were able to recalculate our carbon footprint using the new public data to temper the original data. And we have it's a really amazing program that you can place where every ticket buyer bought their tickets, and then we can calculate the distance to the fair from there, and then knowing what percentage flying, what percentage drive, we can get pretty accurate information. So anyway, we need to continue to get information from the public. We need better help internally, and that's why I'm so excited about the database, which Hillary was speaking so positively to, is now we have a way to email all of Fair Family, and we'll get a much better response from surveys. We'll get much clearer data. And I think we'll learn that we are producing less carbon than we thought, and we can also communicate about ways in which to reduce it in the future. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our recommendations based on the data we received. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't really mention the amount of carbon that we produce. So in the revised amount for 2019 is 1,792 tons of carbon from the public, and a total of 4,400 tons, including all the Fair Family and the other things that we do. And in 2023, with the reduced amount of public coming, that number dropped significantly. And with some of the better carpooling and less going to meetings, the Fair Family dropped also. And so our reduction was about 702 tons. So you ask, well, 2023, what does that represent? And the amount of carbon, and it's about it could be offset by it's equivalent of about 800 cars per year, or 375,000 gallons of gasoline, and it could be offset by 0.9 wind turbines, or 55,000 tree seedlings, maybe about 5,000 acres of forest land, or possibly 3,500 solar panels. So what we want is, of course, for you to pass this motion. And once it's passed, we're going to need some resources to be able to go forward. And we'd like to be able to rekindle our partnership with Portland State University Institute for Sustainable Solutions, because they have professors and they have staff and they have students that can help us gather and calculate the data. We did a good job this year with volunteers, but we could get much more accurate as we go down the road. And I think we need to do that. So some of the things that we might do that came up from the survey are other ways in which we can reduce our carbon, which is to carpool more, Maybe do things like increasing parking passes to reduce the number of people driving to the site, incentives for fair family, for carpooling and bringing things together. And other possibilities are really looking at how we can sequester, or how we can not sequester, but what we do with our land currently to sequester carbon. We have 500 acres, and we have not been able to this point to calculate what that sequesters. With the coming of the emerald ash borer and the potential loss of 60% of our canopy, we'd like to know what we have now and what we might lose and what we could do to offset that. And as I mentioned, there's some good possibilities going down the road to offset carbon by solar panels. I came across a really interesting farm in Colorado that on 5 acres, they have 3,500 panels and they grow plants in between the panels. So this is just one of a number of ideas we could possibly explore as we strive to become carbon neutral. And one of the things we want to do, if you pass the motion, is to develop a plan with some targeted goals of what we want to do to reduce our carbon, and set some goals that say to get down to this level. And so I'm excited about the possibility. I'm so happy that you are doing this, and I've given you a lot of information very quickly. It's a little scientific and can be confusing, but I would love to get any clarifying questions that Sally and I might answer. And Sally, do you have any other strategies you wanted to mention before we do questions?
Just briefly, that we also need to continue our kind of communication education drive to let people know about carpooling and what that does and how much that helps, and to encourage that sort of thing. So behavior change is a part of it too.
Okay, are we doing Q&A, AJ?
We are not. If your question is regarding the motion itself, we can ask questions, but we're not going to do the Q&A right afterwards. So
okay.
We're going to have membership, and if they have a question, we'll have somebody answer those questions, as well as if the board has some questions.
Okay, so we're going to go now to member input. If you have, is there any member who has input on the carbon neutral motion? Please raise your hand to chat. Any member input on the carbon neutral motion? Last call. Anne.
I would hope that the carbon neutral, I really support you guys. In fact, we carpooled this year instead of taking more than one vehicle. But I hope, because I feel this is really interdisciplinary, that at least a member of LUMP, EAB Task Force, and Carbon Neutral can participate in each other's meetings to facilitate this and to build support and community for this wonderful thing that will at least be doing our part. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Last call for member input. Is there anyone else? Raise your hand in chat. Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the carbon neutral motion? AJ.
Yeah, I support this motion. The only question I really have about it is, how important is the date set? I know we've moved it. I would like to see us possibly change the language to not put a certain date and time on it, because I don't want to keep pushing it out and out now. We're going in that direction. We'll get there when we get there. Yeah, so I guess that's my question. How important is that 2030 date
Are you asking that question of the Sally and
to the
Craig?
group.
Yeah.
The date is important in that without a deadline, things tend to pass over time. And so will we ever become totally carbon neutral without offsets? I don't think so. But the reason we would like to have a date is it'll just be more motivating for the fair to try and take action and move forward. Where there is no date, it can sort of slip to the back burner. So whatever you guys choose would be fine, but that's my feeling. Sally?
Okay. Anything else, AJ? Okay, moving on, John Steinhardt.
Yeah, I appreciate the work. I support the motion. I would encourage you to try to go a little further, because if we were to draw the correlation that maybe the environment gave us a very hot fair this year, carbon neutrality isn't going to change it. It's not going to lower the thermostat. It's just going to keep it where it is. And I'd also encourage you to, and I think you're doing some of this, to not just look for technical solutions, but behavior changing solutions. The reason for my comment at the last meeting was that some of us tried to cancel the board meeting because we would have had to have driven a long way for it last month, and there wasn't anything super serious on the agenda. But other board members said, oh no, it's really important for us to get together in person. And that's a decision people can make. But to me, it said, wow, seeing people in person is slightly more important than having a planet on which to see them. And so we actually need to think about how we're going to change our behavior as opposed to just looking for a technical fix. But anyway, good work, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Thank you. Sandra.
Yeah, I would just like to remind everybody that we chose this initiative as part of the 50th anniversary sustainability project. We felt it was important to our organization and has been. I think it continues to be. This group is asking for more time to get it done right and to get it done. And so I support giving him the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Paxton.
I support the motion. The date's a goal, and I personally expect the date to slip. I really appreciate the additional information that we're getting to further calculate our carbon usages. I think that's really important. And I also want to think that the committee consider biochar as a way of sequestering carbon as we look into our Emerald Ash Borer goals. So I think that's going to be an important part of this also. Thank you.
Thank you, Paxton. Lisa Parker.
I want to thank you both, Craig and Sally, for coming this evening and giving us this update. It's been very informative. And I was happy to vote yes on the original carbon neutrality motion, and I'm happy to vote yes again tonight. I think that on the motion as worded, I think that you all know what you're doing, and I am just so grateful and appreciative that you're doing it. Keep it up.
Any more board discussion? Raise your hand in chat. Okay, seeing none, no one spoke against the motion. There was a mention of a different deadline. Does anyone want to offer an amendment? Last call. Does anyone want to offer amendment? If not, I'm going to ask if there is any objection to adopting the motion by unanimous consent. Any objection to adopting the motion by unanimous consent? Last call. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next business, it's the appointment of Aaron Moffett and Jill Carter to Food Committee, sponsored by AJ, Sue, and Paxton.
I want to move that the board appoint. Sorry, my voice is shot. Board moves to appoint Aaron Moffett and Jill Carter to Food Committee.
Second.
Third.
Copy. Moved by Sue and seconded by Paxton. I got that correct, didn't I?
Yeah.
Thirded by AJ, I believe. Is there any discussion? Is Aaron Moffett the one that's here?
I'm not sure if Aaron's here. I haven't seen the other screen.
Or Jill Carter? Do we want to hear from either of these people?
I'm not seeing either one of them.
Okay.
present currently.
So do I see Spirit wanting to speak to the appointment of Aaron Moffett and Jill Carter?
Yeah,
Okay.
I am hoping to get some confirmation from the board that there's consistency in process here about appointing members to committees. I have been on the board and I have watched board meetings happen where people have been denied due to lack of consistency in process. So can I get a thumbs up from the board or something to make me feel confident that this is a supported process all across?
Okay. We'll see if that comes up. And so you're asking if this appointment is conformed to a standard process, if I'm understanding you. Is there any more member input?
Yes.
Seeing none, board discussion? Any board discussion? Anyone want to comment on the standardization of process? Lisa? Oh, wait, John Steinhardt.
If Lisa wants to talk about process, she can go first. I wanted to talk about the people.
Lisa, do you have anything on process?
Well, I was just going to say that I did read the letters of interest from the two applicants, and I also read the letter of support from the food committee, and these were very helpful for me to be able to support these appointments.
Thank you very much. John, go ahead.
Yeah, like Lisa, I read all the supporting documentation, and I made a point to speak to both of them at the fair. And I just wanted to give a special thanks to Jill, who at the 11:59 hour put in a huge amount of effort to make sure we had really good food booth information for the info booths this year. That got done Monday night before the fair. And she pulled all the data together for me to put that into the software. And I really appreciate it. And if that's what we're going to get, having them on the committee, that's wonderful.
Thank you very much. Paxton.
This to me followed the standard committee appointment process where the people talk before the committee and then the committee recommends they send a letter to the board. And the committee also sends a letter saying that they would like to have them. And that's actually the process that I saw being used this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Sue.
Yes, food committee has had a long-standing call out for new members, and we want people to be to a few meetings before we take any action. And I'm hoping that we can agree to appoint both Aaron and Jill because food committee has a lot of work on our plate. We are doing our best to serve the food committee as well as all of FAIR. It takes so many different layers, and having the skill sets of Aaron and Jill will help us immensely in reaching our goals for helping. Thank you.
Thank you. And AJ.
Yes, what was already said, and I will add that I am excited about this appointment as well because I've seen these two folks in action and what they bring to the food committee already, and I'm excited about the future of what they bring. I love when people step up to help us when we're in need. And the food committee worked so hard, and we needed new people and fresh ideas. And I think this is what we're getting. And so thank you to the both of you for stepping up.
Thank you, AJ. There's no one else on the stack. I have not heard anyone speak against the appointments. Is there any objection to the appointment of Aaron Moffett and Jill Carter to Food Committee? Is there any objection to appointing that appointment by unanimous consent? Last call. Seeing none, the appointment is approved by unanimous consent. Next motion is to appoint Glenn Dolphin to Lump Committee, sponsored by AJ, Sue, Paxton, and George.
I'll make that motion.
And,
second it.
And seconded by John Steinhardt, moved by Paxton, seconded by John Steinhardt. Is there any member input on this appointment? Last call for member input. Is there any board input on this appointment? John Steinhardt.
Yeah, I definitely want to support Glenn after observing his behavior at the May Lump meeting. As I think many of you know, we're having trouble keeping some of our committees doing what we want them to do. And he was the only person in the room who spoke that actually knew what a purpose of a board committee was. And we could certainly use more of that. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Paxton.
He's been coming to lump meetings for about a year, and he does environmental conservation work as in his professional work. Has experience with soil and water conservation and restoration of environment, natural environment. So, and he's volunteered to help Lump, and we sure would like to have his help. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got two more people on stack. I'm being advised Glenn is here. Does Glenn,
Yes.
would you like to say anything for yourself? Is there any objection to that? Hearing no objection. Do you have anything to say, Glenn, before we move on with?
Just appreciate everybody's support. I'm, a new member of the family, 2 years now, and I have fallen in love with the fair, and I really want to help. And the Lump Committee, like Paxton mentioned, I've been able to kind of just observe and absorb everything and learn. And I feel like I really want to step up and help that committee with their objectives. So appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue, did you have something to say? I have you on the list, but it looks like Lisa Parker in the stack here. So
I just wanted to point out that he was here.
Oh, okay. Lisa.
Yeah, I read your letter of interest, Glenn. It was very helpful to me. You explained your experience and your contributions to the community well. And I also read the committee's letter of support. And from all signs that I can see, you seem to be a good fit for the committee. And I want to welcome you and thank you for stepping up.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there any more board discussion on this appointment? If so, raise your hand in chat. It's the last call for board discussion. Seeing that no one spoke against the appointment, I will ask, is there any objection to appointing Glenn Dolphin to the Lump Committee by unanimous consent? Last call, is there any objection to appointing Glenn Dolphin to the Lump Committee by unanimous consent? Seeing none so ordered, Glenn Dolphin is appointed by unanimous consent. Moving on, the next item of old business is the establishment of a minimum age for OCF membership, sponsored by John Alexander, George Braddock, Paxton Hogue, Kevin Levy, Lisa Parker, Sue Theolis, and Teresa Vaughn. Does someone want to make the motion?
I will make the motion. I should also mention that I am planning on moving to remand this back to the joint committee. So I'm just wondering what you think the best process for this would be, Stephen.
Well, the typical process would be that motion comes to the floor. I mean, it's part of our process that's complicated is members have to speak before they know if anything is going to be done there, and can't rely on it occurring because it hasn't passed to remand it yet. But typically the motion should come to the floor, and then that's just an amended motion to remand it back to committee. So moved by Lisa Parker. Is there a second? Seconded by Teresa Vaughn. Is there any member input on this motion?
Would you like me to read the preamble?
Sure.
Okay, so we have the preamble here where it is in the interest of the Oregon Country Fair to define the eligibility requirements for voting membership in its bylaws. And whereas currently the age requirement is dependent on the age requirement to obtain a wristband, which is an operations matter outside the scope of the bylaws, the board resolves to establish a minimum voting age of 16 years by the date of an election and to amend the bylaws to effect the change as follows. There's a lot of text here. It might be more helpful to do a screen share, but essentially it involves changing adding an age of 16 years to eligibility requirements. And then there was another housekeeping piece where it would involve moving a phrase, the administrative requirement to register to vote at least 30 days prior to the membership meeting from Article 6A, Article 5, Section 6A, excuse me, to Article 5, Section 2, and create a new Section 2D. And there's been some, kind of back and forth about that particular piece of it and whether that constitutes a voting right or if it's just an administrative requirement. And so anyway, that's the motion.
Thank you. And is there any member input on this motion? So I'm going to have some member input, and I do realize that you're planning to send it back to committee, and you did identify my primary concern. But given the nature of how our process works, if I'm going to have member input, I have to speak it now and presume that the motion is going to be on the floor. So my member input, I'm assuming I'm going to get, yep. I urge you not to pass this motion as presented. No change to the voting section of the bylaws is actually required to establish the minimum age for OCF membership. You can simply change this motion so that it addresses only the establishment of a minimum membership age. To do that, amend the motion to remove any change to Article 5, Section 6A. Currently, the voting section of the bylaws makes a promise to the entire membership that new members will have a right to vote after having been members for 30 days. As almost all people seem to agree, whether or not one gets to vote is at least as much a voting right as what one gets to vote on. The voting section of the bylaws is distinguished from other bylaws sections by an explicit promise contained in Article 11. Article 11 says that no right contained in the voting section of the bylaws can be changed without a vote of the membership. The plain language of this is there for anyone to see. There should be no need to spend hundreds of dollars on lawyer opinions to figure out if defining when voting rights begin is a voting right, or whether or not Article 11 requirements can be bypassed. Even if there are differing opinions about whether this is a voting right, treating it with greater care is the prudent course to take. The bylaws are the constitution of our community, and nothing within the bylaws should be more sacred than that of member voting rights. The high road here is to treat this as the voting right, even if you are doubtful, and if any language change is desired, send that change to the membership. If the goal here is to ensure that someone who will attain the minimum membership age less than 30 days before an election can apply for membership early and still vote in that election, this change can be accomplished by referring the issue to the membership for a vote. That would be in keeping with the letter and spirit of the protections that member voting rights enjoy in our bylaws. Please trust the membership and honor the protections that member voting rights are supposed to enjoy under our bylaws. Again, you can simply amend this motion to remove any changes to Article 5, Section Sil A, and still accomplish the main purpose of this motion, the establishment of a minimum age for membership. And I think I will leave it at that. Thank you for your consideration. And below me, I see Lawrence Taylor.
I'll be brief on this point. When I wrote Article 11, Section 2, I'm pretty clear in what I meant. I've lost you guys, pardon me. There we are. And I was surprised to learn that that my words were taken in an entirely different way in which they were intended. And I think there's a solution. And I look forward to this material coming back to the Bylaws Committee, at which point I will promote that we do indeed need to refer to the membership an amendment to Article 11, Section 2, defining the term voting rights. And I'm looking forward to assisting in the authorship of that amendment. And once we've gotten voting rights to mean what in fact we meant it to mean when we passed the motion unanimously some years ago, then we can address these other issues.
Is that a hands down spirit? I'm going to take that as a hands down. Jonathan Pincus. John? Where's John? You seem to be unmuted, but we can't hear you. I'm gonna go on to Heather Kent and John. I don't know if you need to leave and come back. We'll come back to you if you can solve the technical issue. Otherwise, feel free to put your comments in chat. Heather.
So at the last meeting, the last Zoom meeting where this was discussed, there was much back and forth about the attorney's opinion. And then that was read at the bylaws meeting. Is that not going to be shared with the whole membership now that the attorney has said that's fine?
Thank you, Heather. John, did you want to try again? I don't see any chat from you. Oh, okay. John says, John and Spirit both say that I said what they had. Is there any other member input? Last call for member input. We're going to go to board discussion. Heather's got a question out there if somebody can address it. Any board discussion? This would also be when you can make a motion to refer it back to committee, Lisa. Lisa.
Yes. You know, since this issue has been just so rife with debate among us about what different things mean and what would be most appropriate. And there's really no hurry to pass this motion. The joint committee feels that it would be better to remand this back to the joint committee for more work, more deliberation, more discussion, and bring it back to the board at a later time. We feel that it's better to, you know, to get this right, take our time, and to make sure that, you know, everybody has a good understanding of what's going on and everybody can, you know, have their input. And so this is the way to do it, I think, is if the board would remand this motion back to the committee. So I so move.
Second.
I second.
Moved by Lisa Parker and seconded by, was that Teresa? Who was that?
Me. Teresa
Three
might
of
have
us.
seconded too.
Who seconded? I heard me.
And I did
it-
too.
I
Paxton
think
was
three of us
first,
seconded it.
technically.
All right. So, who was first? Give me just
Paxton.
one name. Teresa?
Paxton was.
Paxton was. Okay. Moved by Lisa Parker and seconded by Paxton to send it back to committee. John, did you want to speak to the motion to send it back to committee or pass for now?
I'll pass for now.
Teresa, same question.
I just want, yes, I did want to speak. I just wanted to,
Speak specifically to sending it back to committee.
yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to, just to state that I have a tremendous amount of faith in this committee who listened so deeply to the concerns that people brought up today. And I have a lot of respect for their intentions. So I really do support taking it back to committee. It's a great committee of people.
Thank you. AJ. You're muted.
Yeah, so hopefully Stephen let me know if this is appropriate on this one. But I would hope that in taking this back to the committee, there will be some consideration of the membership having a vote on whatever the outcome is. We are, as a board, have always kind of talked about getting more membership input in big decisions that we make, and this is an opportunity for us to practice that. So I would hope that that would be considered as it goes back to the committee.
Thank you, AJ. The beginning of what you said was garbled to me. I don't know about others. Is there something at the very beginning that we might have missed?
Yeah, I was just saying I would simply I would hope that it would be considered by the committee to have this go to the membership for a vote.
Okay, is there any more board input? Any more board discussion? No one has spoken against it. Is there any objection to sending this back to committee? Last call. Is there any objection to sending this back to committee? Seeing none, the motion goes back to committee by unanimous consent. And we move on to the next motion, which is to clarify the effective beginning of terms of newly elected directors John Alexander, George Braddock, Paxton Hoke, Kevin Levy, Lisa Parker, Sue Theolis, and Teresa Vaughn sponsoring. Who would like to make the motion? Somebody's got to.
I can make this one as well.
Okay.
That's all right.
Moved by Lisa Parker.
So,
Let me get a second. Is there a second to the motion?
second.
Seconded by Teresa. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
I'll read the preamble here. Whereas the beginning and end of a director's term of office needs to be clearly defined, and whereas the board has a tradition of is ceremonially installing new directors at the annual board meeting after the election, and whereas both the Oregon Nonprofit Corporation Act and our bylaws are silent on the start of the effective term of office, and whereas the default effective date when both statute and bylaw are silent is at the time ballots are due at the election, which differs from tradition, I move that the term of office of newly elected directors be effective upon ratification of the election results at the annual board meeting, and to amend the bylaws to effect the change as follows. And then there's the language in the bylaws. It's in Article 7, Section 2E, and it simply adds to that, the term of office of newly elected directors shall be effective upon ratification of the election results at the annual board meeting.
Thank you. Is there any member input on this motion? Last call for member input on this motion. Spirit.
Okay, I'm really conflicted about this because I do think that typically we want to have votes ratified by the board. However, in this case, I have seen the board use the membership vote against the membership for personal reasons. And so therefore, I am feeling like I want to support the ratification of the vote by the membership to happen when the vote of the membership happens, which is when the secretary of the board counts those votes and approves them. That's all.
Thank you, Spirit. Is there any other member input? Last call for other member input. Hold on, member input. No, still board members. Okay, moving on to board discussion. Paxton.
I'm a little unclear. I think I'm opposed to this the way it reads. I really like having the new board members installed at the first meeting, at the first board meeting after the annual meeting, which I assume is the annual board meeting is the big one in October, which is anyway, maybe I'm confused, but I personally prefer to keep our current process. Thank you.
Can I clarify?
Is there any objection? Go ahead.
So yeah, that is what this motion is. So at the annual board meeting, that's the November board meeting. That's considered
okay.
annual board meeting. So this does codify our established local custom.
Thank you. I'm wrong.
Okay. Arna.
I would like to amend this motion. I move to amend the motion by striking both occurrences of the words upon ratification of the election results at the annual board meeting and replacing them with when the election is certified by the membership secretary and the treasurers.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold on to timeout. Okay. So there's a motion to amend it, and I want to be sure that we're shall be effective upon, and you're saying
The certification of the election.
by the membership secretary and treasurers.
Yes.
Is-
So that
and
would
that
be
is-
right after the election.
Right. Moved by Arna and seconded by John Steinhardt.
Oh.
Correct? So what are you trying to say, AJ? You're breaking up.
I
think AJ
oh,
second.
I said second, but it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who gets
That's
the
fine.
second.
Okay. Okay. Moved by Arna and seconded by AJ and John Steinhardt. How's that? So John Steinhardt, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Can I speak for a minute?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You made the motion. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Arna.
I think that it's more effective for the board to have this clarity of the newly elected board members certified upon the election results. It, I think, makes it clearer for our annual board retreat to know, to have them actually be board members when they come to our retreat. Instead of having board members who are not really board members anymore come to the retreat. I'm sorry, guys, I've had a migraine all day, so I'm not thinking as clearly as I should. So maybe I will pass the floor on to the next person who wants to speak about this. And I may come back to speak some more.
Thanks, Arna. And actually then we should go to member input on the amendment before coming back to board members. And I see Lawrence Taylor.
Thank you. Okay, two problems that I see with this amendment, one procedural and one substantive. The procedural issue is that it does not comport with the requirements of Article 11, Section 1, the notice requirement in particular. There was not a copy or summary of this amendment or a statement of its general nature. The general nature of the motion was simply to codify the decades-long practice of the board in terms of handing off to the succession procedure. This is a massive substantive change. And it would be an absolute violation of the notice requirement to do this without at least publication pursuant to Article 11, Section 1. The substantive issue is it's just a bad idea. There's simply nothing broken about the current process, which has served the board and the fair well for countless decades now, in which the newly elected but not seated board meets with the current board, including any members who might either by retirement or by election not be proceeding. There is a handing off. There is orientation. There's all kinds of things that happen for the new members at the board retreat, and there's also a practical matter that it's the seated board, the prior board that is capable of voting to approve the minutes. And it's a very simple process to go to the November board meeting. The minutes are approved by the current board, the outgoing board. Then the election results are ratified by the outgoing board. And then to the extent that there are changes, the changes happen at that time. There's absolutely nothing broken about that system. There's no advantage to be gained in
Your
terms
time.
of. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I raised my hand just to say I'm not sure that it cannot be amended here in this meeting under these bylaws. However, I also think it's wise for any kind of significant change to be sent for publication. But I also want to point out that if you do change it to be when the election is ratified by the membership secretary, that does not prevent you from continuing with the ceremonial process of a handoff. So that's all I have to add to that. Is there any other member input before we go back to board discussion? Last call for member input. John Pincus is, yes, I see he's trying to get in. I admitted him. Is there anyone who wants to say anything? We can't wait for John on that. You just have to try and get in. Last call. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go back to board discussion, and I'm going to go to the stack that was already happening and make sure they want to speak to the amendment. So John Steinhardt, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I support the amendment for a number of reasons. There are problems with the current process, which is you have new board members or newly about to become board members who are showing up at board retreats where they are privy to a lot of confidential information that, not being board members, they're actually not privy to. And that would solve that problem. I think that the older process might have been more important when we had 2 slates of boards that turned over every other year. But now that we have 3, we have very few new board members each year, a maximum of 4. So there really is no particular problem with loss of knowledge that needs to be communicated. And the new board can certainly invite old board members to the retreat if they want to. And also and I don't have it in front of me, but the motion as it was read, I think was actually a little confusing because it talked about at the annual meeting. And to me, the annual meeting is Article 6, number 1, which is the annual meeting called by the board, but in case no later than October 30th. It's not the November board meeting. The annual meeting is defined on page 4 of the bylaws. So I think the amendment actually clears up some confusion as I understand it. Thanks.
Thank you. Kevin Levy, speaking to the amendment.
I think John A. was in front of me.
John A., did you want to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think I might have been confused as Paxton was. This could, and as John Steinhardt just mentioned, change significantly the retreat. So John Steinhardt mentioned that if the ratified board members wanted the outgoing board members to be at the retreat, they could choose to do that. But there's not really a lot of time to make that done. Either way, there's a challenge with the retreat that either the new members or the outgoing members are not privy to the confidential information, but that can be handled with signing some sort of a disclosure or an agreement, or whoever's at that meeting would, be held to confidentiality with regards to that confidential information. So I think that it's just important for us to know that if this amendment went through, then what I'm hearing John Steinhardt say and what's been discussed is that the presence of outgoing board members at the retreat would be up to the new board coming in. And so that's just a significant change that would happen as a result of this as well. And either way, the confidentiality is a problem that can be solved with signed waivers. So those are the consequences that we're not really sure how that would end up working, because we don't know what the new board members would say about the old board member, the outgoing board members participating in that retreat, and where we might stand on the importance of that tradition and transfer of knowledge.
Thank you. Kevin Levy on the amendment.
Yeah, on the amendment, I agree with the amendment as well. I think having gone through the process, you're a new board member, you have no idea what's happening. You get there, it's orientation, it's all these things coming at you. I think this could create an opportunity for the new board members to kind of get previous documents for orientation, to get information ahead of time and kind of be ready for the retreat. Because there's a lot that happens in these legendary retreats. And so really being able to come just a little bit prepared with some of the information, as well as background context and opportunity to engage with other board members as well, and have that confidentiality of being a board member. I think it helps with creating more opportunity for folks to jump in and know that there is kind of a training element, so to speak, or kind of a pre-orientation to the actual orientation. They can be kind of prepared. So I know when I got there, it was really just kind of everything coming at me, and we didn't know what was happening, and so it's a lot. And so I think this is a good opportunity, and I agree. I think we can always have other board members there, but I think it really helps to solidify the relationships for the new board members that are starting to be with their current board members without previous board members there as well. But I don't see a reason why, like John said, a confidentiality can be signed. So yes, I think it's a good amendment. I think it's good to kind of get folks on board and start the onboarding process sooner. So thanks.
Thank you. And Arna.
Well, John Steinhardt and Kevin have said a lot of what I wanted to say. When we talk about the tradition of passing on, from old board members to new board members, when we had in-person meetings, there was a tradition of, the old boarders getting up at the November meeting and, we saying goodbye to them and bringing in the new ones. On Zoom, it just doesn't work for me. I mean, it just does not seem to, be that kind of tradition. And I guess I don't see that tradition being lost. I think we've already lost it by meeting on Zoom rather than in person. If there is a problem with the bylaws, if we need to announce this for another month, I would like to vote on this month, and then we can vote on it again next month after we have published it and announced it to the membership, and, we can take another vote next month to just confirm it, if that's what we need to do. I don't see a problem with that. I certainly don't want to violate our bylaws, and I certainly want the membership to have, advance notice of what we're doing with bylaws, and so that they can, comment on it. And I think Kevin was really right in terms of the bonding of a new board. I mean, I think a retreat is really a way for the new board to get together and get to know each other and bond. And sometimes outgoing board members are not helpful in that situation. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And then I'm not going to repeat what John Steinhardt said, but I support a lot of what he had said too there. So thank you. I obviously support this amendment since I made it. Thanks.
Okay, before going on, I want to clarify the procedural issue that's being discussed here. So Article 11, Section 1 specifically says that, except as provided in Section 2 of this article, the bylaws, which is the whole voting rights thing, the bylaws may be amended by an act of the board at any regular scheduled meeting of the board, provided such notice of intent to amend, together with a copy or summary of the amendment or a statement of the general nature of the amendment, was made prior to the board meeting and given to all directors. So here's the rub. The subject of this amendment has been on the agenda for quite some time. The only issue that sits before us is whether or not any change of it requires a restarting of the timeline. Anyone who is interested in when the election will be certified knew that that was the subject, and it was presented here. So I would say you do not have to wait, but it would certainly be a high road to take. And then for what Arna said, if the high road is to wait a month, then the proper procedure would be to table this to next month's meeting rather than to vote on it and then plan on voting it again. If you vote on it, it's an act of the board. The next person on the stack is AJ.
Yeah. Amendment, and I think something that we're not talking about that I would like us to focus on a little bit more is once the election is certified, the membership has spoken, and that should carry some weight in this decision. Is that the membership has spoken, the new board is the new board, and so yeah, that's one of my reasonings for supporting this motion. Also, I agree with what Arna and Kevin and John had said about our board retreats. We are in a different time than it used to be. And I have found that over the last couple board retreats that it would have been helpful for new board members to have a say, a bigger say in what happens during the retreat. I believe that it would bring the new board, the new board an opportunity to teach and share information freely with the new board members, and I think that's a good thing. But most of all, I support this motion because as soon as the election is certified, the membership has spoken, and that's my bottom line.
Okay, so I'm not sure how this can work, Stephen Dyerkoff. I have a message from Stephen Dyerkoff that chat is broken, which prevented him from getting in the stack. And given his position with the organization, he's asking to clarify something. So I want to insert him into the stack here. Is there any objection to allowing Stephen Dyerkoff to make a clarifying statement?
Nope.
Bring him in.
Okay. Seeing no objection, go ahead and Stephen.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to point out, we have 2 annual meetings in our bylaws, and I think there's some confusion on that. We have an annual meeting of the membership in October, and we have an annual meeting of the board in November. The language in this bylaw change would have the board ratify the election at the annual board meeting, which is the November meeting, not the October meeting. So
Okay.
just want to make sure that's really clear for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. So I have Lisa Parker next.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And if anybody wants to look it up in the bylaws, it's Article 8, Section 1. So I actually oppose this amendment for several reasons. The original motion addresses a problem, which is that our bylaws are silent on when the terms of new directors begin. What this means, according to our legal counsel, is that the default effective date when both statute and bylaw are silent is at the time ballots are due at the election. And hopefully you can see why this is problematic. To remedy this, the original motion codifies our established local custom, which is that the new directors are seated at the November board meeting. This amendment would be a departure from established local custom. In other words, the original motion is a clarification, while this proposed amendment is a major policy change. I don't support the amendment because first, I don't think it's fair to new directors to be placed into office before the board retreat happens, which is what this would do. The board retreat serves as an orientation for new directors to get their feet under them before they're seated in November. Also, there's a time frame between when the election is certified and the November meeting, during which anything can happen. If there's an emergency or other crisis that requires a board response, it's not fair to new directors to thrust them into the situation without even having undergone orientation. And I think it would be better for the organization for any such emergencies or crises to be handled by an experienced board. And I've heard about concerns about confidentiality during the board retreat, and this is easily remedied by having everyone sign a confidentiality agreement. If this amendment passes, the amended motion would need to be tabled and discussed at the September board meeting before we could actually vote on it per the bylaws. And I don't think it's good practice to make such major changes in policy so close to the election. And then what if it doesn't pass? Will we be able to actually pass something to address the original problem that we're trying to address in the first place? I do respect that other directors feel differently about this than I do, and I'm not saying we shouldn't consider changing the policy just because it's different from what we've always done. But what I am saying is, please don't do this right now. Let's get through this election. And if the board still wants to take up the question, it would be better to do so while the election is still fresh in everyone's minds in the rearview mirror, and to take the time to thoroughly examine the issue and identify the pros and cons before bringing it to a vote. I'm asking you to please pass the original motion as offered by the Joint Bylaws Election Committee tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. Paxton.
I too am opposed to this, and in part because of what I've observed over 30 years of service on the board. I have seen the current process work very, very well. I think it's very wise to have both the current board members and the previous board members at the retreat. That has proved to be exceptionally valuable over the years. And so I kind of think the current process is not broken in reality. And confidentiality is agreed on by everyone at the beginning of this, both new and old. And even the old ones are bound by it after they leave. So I find I much prefer the way it works. It works. It's a great way of educating new board members. So I am opposed to the motion as the amendment as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to a couple people who have not spoken to the amendment yet, and then come back. So Sandra.
Okay, well, I don't think this is a major change. I think this is definitely amendable at this meeting. I mean, it's a change of a few days, and it's largely invisible to anybody but some board members. So I think it's a matter of days, but I think they're important days. I think once, I've been on a lot of different boards, and I would say most of them, if I hadn't really thought about it before, if not all, don't have the same kind of waiting period between when people are elected and when they are responsible as board members. So I don't think this is, I don't think this is out of the realm of normal. And I think that, I do think that there have been some issues in terms of having both old outgoing board members and new board members at the retreat. I think when new members are elected, when we have the election, that, they for whatever emergencies may come up, they're going to be responsible for those emergencies in another few days. So they should be from the time of election and not have like a lame duck board making decisions for the organization when an election has taken place. And I definitely agree with AJ that the membership has spoken at that point. And I think we need to respect that. So as soon as it's certified, I think that that new board should be considered seated. So I definitely support this amendment and I hope you vote for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'm right about who's already spoken to the amendment, so I'm going to go to Sue and then go back up.
I oppose the amendment. And Lisa said it far more succinctly than I could. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Teresa.
I feel really conflicted about this. I do support the amendment, but I also support Lisa in wanting us to wait a month. I do want to have one clarification that the orientation for me was not the board retreat. It was the orientation I received from the ED. Like that is what enabled me to be able to make those decisions. And so understanding those things to me was the orientation. I don't know what that process was called, but in my mind, that was my orientation. I did find it awkward to be at a retreat with the old and the new board members. And on the other hand, I love the democratic concept of a peaceful transfer of power. So I feel really conflicted about all of it. And I know none of that was terribly useful, but there you go.
Thank you. I will remind that in order to move this, there will need to be a motion to postpone it if we're going to postpone it. I go back to the top now, people who've already spoken. John Steinhardt.
Yeah, I don't think this is a particularly major change. I agree with Teresa that I was all oriented before the retreat. I had piles of reading material. I spent time on the phone with Kirsten. I was ready to roll when I got there. I did want to just make a comment on what the other John had to say, which is we've had some pretty dysfunctional boards in the past. Can't say that won't happen again. I would hate to be in a situation where the outgoing board members decided not to invite the new board members to the retreat. I think having it be in the hands of the new board members instead of the old board members is a much better thing for the organization. And I'm neutral as to whether we want to postpone this or not.
Thank you. John Alexander.
Question about the procedure you mentioned. So if we would be able to vote, if we were to take the high road, as you said, Stephen, we would be able to vote on this amendment. So that would be approved if it passed. And then we would hold out on approving the motion at the next meeting.
We would, no, it would be a motion to postpone this to next month. And then we would pick it up with the amendment specifically. So the amendment will have been published for a month. So it would be to take this, it would be a motion to postpone until the next board meeting.
So that would be basically saying that that would be amending it without a vote.
That would be no. So the main motion is as presented and written. Arna made an amendment. If we postpone it till next meeting, we would pick this motion up with the amendment specifically. But the amendment will have been published for a month.
So then we'd vote on the amendment and then vote and
then vote on
the motion. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
I will leave it at that.
Was that what you're wanting to do?
Well, that's what it seems. Yeah, it's fine. It's great.
Is that what? Okay. When you say it's fine, it's great. Are you making a motion or are you just clarifying the information?
I'm clarifying.
Okay. Kevin Levy.
Thanks. I'll be quick. I was just going to speak on, like Lisa was saying, emergencies. If something happened, we're newly elected, something happens day 2. That short amount of time between then and becoming an official board member, it's just not great enough to make a difference as far as emergencies go. We're not going to be that much more experienced by that point as far as a experienced board goes. And for me, I trust that I know that my fellow board members will never let me fail and that they would be there to help me through such a process if something happened as well. I'd be there for any new board members if there was some kind of emergency or something we all had to get together. And so I think it makes sense, but also I think that we'll still be fine to be able to get everybody on board and ready to go from day one of the election being certified. So thanks.
Thank you. And AJ.
Yeah. So I was hesitant to bring this up, but I think it's relevant and important. We have had a contentious couple of retreats, and I just will share that it's important to me that we seat the new board at the. I agree with this amendment. I want to share that in our last retreat, the first day, our new board members experienced a outgoing board member put their hands on me, and I was the acting president at the time. And so that was the first experience at our board retreat last year. And I think to act like those things didn't happen and that didn't happen does a disservice to not only the membership, but to the incoming board members. And I had kept quiet about this for a while, but I think it's relevant to this point. There is something to be said about the emotions of folks who are no longer board members. I had to experience that personally, having someone put their hands on me during as I acted as the president of this organization in that moment. And so I want the membership to hear that. And that is one of the reasons why I support this motion. I think it's important for the new board to have a fresh start, especially if there's hard feelings or any of that sort of thing between the old board, the outgoing board members, and current board members.
Thank you, AJ. Arna.
Excuse me. I'm not going to repeat the things that everybody else has said. I agree with most of the speakers here who are speaking in favor of this motion. I did just want to say that the Bylaws Elections Committee actually had discussed this option as one of the options for this. And they decided not to give us two options, but they did recognize this as a valid option and, suggested that I offer it as an amendment because they saw no problem with this option. I have offered it as an amendment, but I do want to say that the Elections Bylaws Committee saw no problem with this and, put it forward as one of the options we could look at. I just wanted everyone to know that. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Sandra.
Yeah, and Stephen, when you were reading the bylaws about having, Arna did send out the amendment to all the directors, so that was met. So, the bylaw responsibility there was met because she made sure that everybody had the amended, the suggested amendment much in advance of the board meeting. So I don't think there's a bylaw issue there at all.
Yeah, duly noted. So it wasn't in the public sphere, but it meets the notification requirement of board members.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here. I see John Alexander.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody, and there's some real good arguments coming both directions, discussions, whatever we call them. I really appreciate what Teresa said. I do think that this substantially changes some things around whatever we call it, tradition, the way things are being done. Therefore, I would move to postpone this decision to take the high road and give this 30 days as you might interpret the bylaws to read we should do. That was a confounded motion, but there you go.
So, yeah, and then actually, I think Sandra's clarification was valid on that, but that doesn't change whether or not it's published. So you're moving to postpone it to next meeting.
Second.
Moved by John Alexander and seconded by Paxton to postpone to next meeting. We are now discussing whether or not to postpone this motion. Did you want to speak to that, Lisa? The postponement.
No, I wanted to speak to something else.
Okay. Is there any member input on postponing this motion? We're going to go quickly. Last call for member input. Is there any board discussion on postponing this motion until next meeting? Last call. Is there any objection to postponing this to next meeting? Does anybody want a voice vote?
I object.
Object.
Okay. All right. So postponement till next meeting. Sandra,
No.
George,
No.
Paxton,
Yes.
AJ,
No.
Lisa,
Can you come back to me?
John Steinhardt,
No.
Sue,
No,
John Alexander.
I'm sorry.
Did you want to change your vote, Sue?
I want to postpone.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's a yes.
I'm
That's
sorry.
all right. John Alexander,
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
No.
Kevin Levy.
No.
Yes? Was that a yes or a no?
That was a no. Sorry.
Okay, no. And then you were shaking your head in a circle. I couldn't tell. Okay, so the motion fails with Sandra, George, AJ, John Steinhardt, Arna, and Kevin voting no. So we are back to the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
And I abstained. If you had come back to me, I would have
Oh,
abstained.
I'm sorry. You got a blank spot here. You abstained? Motion still fails. So thank you. I apologize. Back to the amendment. And did you want to speak to the amendment, Lisa?
Yeah, so I'm hearing some things that I'd just like to respond to a little bit. I think you know, uncomfortable situations unfortunately are kind of come with the territory of being on this board. And I feel like, we're all adults and we can't control anybody else. We can only control ourselves. And I have actually had more positive experience at the retreats than I have negative. I have had opportunities to make connections with outgoing directors that I wouldn't have normally had. And I think it actually is really helpful to hear what they have to say, to hear their input, because they've been on the board for 2 or 3 years, depending. So that's just not a huge, that's not compelling to me. And as far as confidentiality, again, I think that everybody present agrees that it's a confidential setting. And again, that would be easy to remedy, just have the oncoming directors who haven't been seated yet sign a confidentiality agreement if you feel that's necessary. Speaking to the incident that was brought up before, I'm not going to speak to that specifically because I kind of feel like that is something confidential and probably shouldn't talk about it. But I will say about that I think it's really bad practice to make policy around one thing. When, in this whole history of board meetings, you know, we haven't had those sorts of things happen. So again, I respect all of my fellow directors who have a different opinion than I do about this. But what I'm asking is that we go ahead and codify what our local custom has been. It's established. And if folks want to pick up the question, if we want to change our policy, which I think this is a drastic change, then let's take up that question. Maybe take it up after the new board is seated, because I think that that would be more fair to involve them in the decision, because they will have gone through the election process more recently. So that's it.
Thank you. So I will ask that we try and focus on new stuff. We are running out of time, and I'm going to ask, can I get unanimous consent for a 15-minute extension to finish this piece of business? Is there any objection to a 15-minute extension?
I object.
Okay. Is there any, can I get a motion for a 15-minute extension?
I so move.
I see AJ moved and John Steinhardt seconded. Is that good?
Good enough.
Okay. Sandra, 15-minute extension.
Yes.
George,
No.
Paxton,
Yes.
AJ,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
John Steinhardt,
Yes.
Sue,
No.
John Alexander.
I can't caveat my vote because there's no discussion on this.
Well, it defeats the purpose of extending the meeting if you're running out of time to debate whether or not to extend the meeting.
No.
So, what's your vote?
No.
No. Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to extend the meeting 15 minutes with George, Sue, and John Alexander voting no. And so now go back to the stack. I ask people to be brief. I got John Steinhardt, AJ, and Sue on the stack.
I don't think you got Lisa Parker's vote. Did I miss that?
Lisa Parker, you said yes, correct? Yeah. So I have John Steinhardt, AJ, and Sue on the stack at the moment. John Steinhardt?
Call the question.
Call the question. Okay, is there a second to calling the question? Arna, is that you seconding?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by John Steinhardt and seconded by Arna to call the question. So now we are voting on the amendment. Sandra,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Paxton,
No.
AJ,
Yes.
Lisa,
No.
John Steinhardt,
Yes.
Sue,
No.
John Alexander,
No.
Teresa Vaughn,
Yes.
Arna,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
So if I am not mistaken, that still fails, correct, by one vote? Kirsten, can you confirm that?
It's a 0.63 and we need a 0.66, so it fails.
Yeah, people don't come in partials. Motion fails with Paxton, Lisa, Sue, and John Alexander voting no. We're back to the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion?
Hand.
Go ahead.
I think that this motion is important. I like the idea of the discussion that we had last time. So I do like what Lisa suggested, that we revisit that clarification. I'm not in objection to that clarification. I just wanted to take the high road on it because it did seem to be a departure from a norm, and it seemed to be a substantial change to me. So I'm in support of bringing that up again and making that fix. But I wanted to take the high road, as it was said. So I would support this motion or let it sit and wait till we discuss that more. But I don't know what's appropriate. So there we go.
Thank you. John Steinhardt.
Call the question.
The question has been called. Is there a second? Good. Seconded by Teresa. Called by John Steinhardt and seconded by Teresa. Sandra.
No. So
This is on the motion as presented, as originally written.
No, I'm a no.
George.
Yes.
Paxton.
Yes.
AJ.
No.
Lisa.
Yes.
John Steinhardt.
No.
Sue.
Yes.
John Alexander.
Yes.
Teresa Vaughn.
Yes.
Arna.
No.
Kevin.
No.
So the motion fails with Sandra, AJ, John Steinhardt, Arna, and Kevin Levy voting no. And with that, we have the 15 minutes remaining. Is there any of this business that can be concluded in that time period? The change of the petition signature requirements or the process to keep committees in good standing, or shall we simply push that to next meeting?
I vote we
Committees
push
in
it.
good standing definitely needs to be pushed.
Mhm.
I think we could do the other one though.
The changing the petition signature requirements from a hard number to a percentage?
I hope so.
Is there going to be,
Push.
That feels like a big discussion.
that
Sorry.
feels like a big discussion to me, given the prior discussions that occurred. If anybody is going to be is anybody going to be objecting to this motion? Is it going to be debated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then I say that both of those should be pushed to next meeting. That leaves us with, is there any objection to pushing those to next meeting and moving on the agenda? Okay. We're going to go then. New business is to appoint Sandra Bauer to the Personnel Policies Committee, sponsored by AJ, John Alexander, and Arna Shaw. And then the appointment of Ashley Ackerberg to the Personnel Policies Committee, supported by AJ, Tom Horn, and Sandra Bauer. And now we'll take a few minutes for the meeting evaluation. If you have anything on the meeting evaluation, raise your hand in chat. Members or board members, anybody? Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, I want to quickly address the outrageous circumstance that AJ described, based only on his words. The idea that any board member, outgoing, incoming, or otherwise, would place their hands in anything but a spirit of love on another member of this family.
Point of order, this is not meeting evaluation.
Yeah. Okay. Lawrence, I understand the sentiment. Let's just.
I'm getting somewhere. If I could be allowed, I did want to say, however, that it sounds like a unique experience, and I'm sure it's never happened before, and I'm confident it'll never happen again. And therefore, I just want to say that hard cases make bad law. In that respect, the other point,
evaluation, point of order.
John,
I am evaluating that. I would also like to note that there were comments made about dysfunctional boards as a portion of this meeting. I would say that one person's dysfunctional board may be another person's active democracy, just as one person's functional board may be another person's lockstep rubber stamp. However, the idea that any board, outgoing board, would bar new incoming board members from a retreat is utterly outrageous, but sadly not surprising.
Okay, well, so let's try and keep these comments to about the meeting itself, so I understand, talking about comments that were made and how they made you feel, but let's try not to introduce new discussions. Heather.
So unfortunately, this is the only place I get to say it. That was absolutely not meeting evaluation material. So I need to know what board member I should contact to get a motion made to clarify what is meeting evaluation and what is commentary.
Yeah, and I will say that I'm doing my best, but sometimes I have to let people play out a little bit to figure out what's being said. And not all of it was not meeting evaluation, but some of it wasn't. So let's try and focus on if something is said in the meeting that strikes one as inappropriate, then the fact that that is inappropriate or the opinion that that is inappropriate can be part of meeting evaluation, but not beyond that to remedy or other commentary on it. And that's the best that I can do in this somewhat subjective bit here. John, let me go to Teresa Vaughn and then John Steinhardt, I think. Did you already speak once? Go ahead, Teresa.
Anyway, this was a challenging conversation for me, and I really appreciated hearing the detailed reasons that people had on but I don't think there were big sides, but on both ways to move forward. And I really appreciated people listening to each other at this meeting, even if we didn't make a decision.
Well, and saying no is a decision. Thank you. John Steinhardt.
Well, I thought it was a pretty good meeting. I thought we got more business done than we have in the past. If we could just not make our points 3 or 4 times in a row, I think it would go a lot quicker and we would have made it through the entire agenda. So I hope we can do that in the future. Thanks. Good job, everybody.
Thank you, John. Sue.
This meeting just reminds me of how much I miss being able to meet in person.
Thank you, Sue. AJ.
Well, I feel like the meeting, I've got mixed feelings about the meeting. I feel unseen by what was hard for me to share in this meeting. But that is where we are, apparently. So I usually save my comments for the president's piece, but I think it's really hard. That was really hard to share, and it's really hard to not feel supported in what I shared in this meeting tonight.
Thank you. Any other meeting evaluation? Raise your hand in chat. Last call. Jonathan Pincus, do you have audio?
I believe I do.
Oh, we hear you. We do hear you.
Great. What I would ask is, as I guess it's an evaluation, but it would have been helpful if someone besides the facilitator and the chair were also keeping track of who's trying to, people incoming to the meeting and hands and so forth, because both of those folks have a lot to do. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Last call now as we wind down. Lisa Parker.
I just want to say that I think the meeting was well facilitated. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. Last call. Seems if I do that, then somebody else raise their hand. Give it just a minute here. Okay. We're moving on from meeting evaluation. The next board meeting is Monday, September 9th, 2024, 7 p.m. via Zoom. And the president's piece. You're muted. You're muted, AJ. Got it.
Sorry, I have two short parts to the president's piece. The first part is I like to show appreciation to our volunteers any chance that I can get. And so tonight's appreciation is to the engineers and construction crew that build the Far Side Bridge every year. I've had an opportunity as a security person to witness them at work, and the fact that I would say probably thousands of people cross that bridge every year, and I have not heard of anybody falling through or hurting themselves. They do it with kindness. They do it with cheer. They are a family that if you walk by when they're building that crew, they are amazing people. I would encourage you all to, on Tuesdays when they're building that bridge, to go over and say hi. I love those guys, and I want to give a shout out to them tonight from the president. The second part is some sad news that we missed at the beginning of the meeting, and I want to hand just a minute off to the member Carolyn to talk about a loss that we've had in our community. Carolyn.
Thank you, AJ. Peggy Day Fitzgerald, longtime elder, passed away in the early morning of Wednesday, July 31st. She was 84 years old. Dean Middleton shared that Peggy was instrumental in the early days of KOCF's formation. She helped create the operational plan that was used to convince the board to approve KOCF to begin broadcasting. He was also a founding supporter to the station. Peggy was one of the very early elders. She attended most committee meetings, and she always showed up for retreats. She assisted with the building of the elders' website right before her death, and right up to that point when she was so ill, she took on the entire project of the 2024 Elders T-shirt program and compiled all those shirts and brought them to the fair for us to pass out. Unfortunately, she was so ill that she couldn't stay at the fair and returned home. Little did we know how ill Peggy really was. Words used to describe Peggy was smart, kind, and caring. She was a force of nature. She was dauntless. Michael James Long wrote, and this is so true for all of us who knew her, Peggy would always speak her mind, and yet somehow she managed to remain non-offensive, endearing herself further to all elders. Our Peggy will be dearly missed. Thank you, Peggy, for all you've done for elders and all you've done for the Oregon Country Fair.
Thank you, Carolyn.
May she rest in peace. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Hug your loved ones and be good to each other. Have a good night.
With that, the August 5th board meeting of the Oregon Country Fair will be adjourned.
Thank you. Fair TV is streaming main stage.
Thanks, everybody.
I have something better, which is
Good night.
Good night.
Night.